The world knew that the young master of the Wen family, John Wen, had fallen for the housekeeper's daughter. It was said that for her, the young master raced cars, fought battles, and even acted ruthlessly. At auctions, he spent extravagant amounts just to make her smile. He bought luxury homes and cars for her and her mother. Later, he even changed his ways, no longer frequenting bars and avoiding the socialites who approached him. In private, he was attentive and meticulous toward her. Everyone was curious about what kind of captivating beauty could make the young master so utterly devoted. But I knew, because this very woman was now wearing the dress I had ordered half a year in advance, gracefully walking into my birthday banquet toward me. Sister, I'm so sorry. If I had known this dress was yours, I wouldn't have worn it. Now I've even stolen your spotlight. It's all John's fault, Mary said, her soft, delicate voice laced with mock regret, her eyes shimmering with feigned tears. The strapless, high-slit gown, ill-fitting on her, failed to constrain her 30-60 figure, drawing countless admiring glances as soon as she entered, particularly from the male attendees. Mary clearly relished being the center of attention. Sister, you're not mad, are you? Look, the housekeeper's daughter pretending to apologize shamefully to the rich heiress. Does this make sense? Yes, it does, because the world we're in is a novel to sweet, indulgent romance story centered on my younger brother John and Mary, and I, as the cannon fodder supporting character in this tale, was destined to serve as the perfect tool for their romantic saga. Mary wanted to break into the entertainment industry, so John demanded that I pour my company's resources into making her a top actress. When she got pregnant, my mother insisted I cook nourishing soups for her. When my fiancé liked her, he threatened to break off the engagement unless I took good care of her, and eventually, I would be ruined. My company hacked by her 3-year-old genius son, leading to a plummeting stock price and my financial ruin. By then, Mary would sweetly embrace John and say, "John, isn't our son amazing?" And the two would begin their shamelessly blissful life together. Does this make sense? Of course not. As the proud and noble eldest daughter of the Wen family, would I willingly play a side character and meet such an end? Absolutely not. I would be the protagonist of my own life. And whatever they wanted, I would make sure they could never get it. Sue, you're overreacting. It's just a dress. There's no need to blow things out of proportion, said my fiancé, Mower, his tone reproachful. Mower, the devoted male supporting character in this novel. During the 2 years when Mary faked her death after hearing about John's engagement, it was this dashing fiancé of mine who tenderly stayed by her side. But now that John had found her, Mower could only remain by Mary's side under the guise of being her big brother. And I, his fiancé, had never been worth his attention. After Mary graduated, she joined Mower's company. Her clumsy nature led her to spill coffee on him or input the wrong data, even presenting the wrong documents during meetings. Whenever she made a mistake, she would look up at Mower with tearful eyes, her voice trembling as she apologized pitifully. Once forgiven, she would cheerfully stick out her tongue and promise not to do it again. This lively, spirited girl was unlike anything Mower had ever encountered in his strict, orderly life. Falling for her was inevitable. He began bringing Mary to social events, introducing her to his network, and dining with her in the office, their proximity close enough to brush fingers. When they accidentally touched, they would exchange knowing smiles. The first time I caught them, Mower's expression turned momentarily flustered before he quickly composed himself. Confronted with my accusations, he raised his voice to mask his guilt. "Sue, how can you be so petty? Mary is just a naive young girl. What's wrong with me looking out for her? Do you really need me to admit that there's something between us? Fine, I'll admit it. Sue, can you stop being unreasonable? You're exhausting me." At this point, Mary would stubbornly look at me, her tears on the brink of falling. "Sue, there's nothing inappropriate between Mr. Song and me. How can you accuse me like this?" She would say tearfully, just like now. Dressed in the couture gown I had been eagerly awaiting, she stood before my fiancé with reddened eyes, her gaze sparkling with contrived innocence. I calmly cut a piece of cake, lifted it to my mouth, and took a bite. Did I say anything? I looked up at Mary. knowing she was waiting for me to act arrogant and unreasonable just to highlight her purity and innocence. You've worn the dress, and you've garnered everyone's sympathy. What more? Do you want me to apologize to you? Before I could finish, the plate in my hand was slapped to the ground, the cake splattering everywhere. Sue, watch your tone. Mower shouted at me, his anger flaring. The commotion quickly drew attention, including my younger brother John, who was mingling with guests nearby. He strode over to Mary, softly comforting her before shooting me a disapproving glare. Apologize. See, this is what it means to have a protagonist's aura. Whenever she's wronged, there will always be someone ready to stand up for her, like Mower or John. My silence only made the glimmer of triumph in Mary's eyes more obvious. She clearly enjoys watching me fall from grace. Sister, women shouldn't be so aggressive. It's unbecoming, Mary said in her soft, delicate voice, as if imparting wisdom. The most important thing for us women is to find a good husband. Being too strong or career-focused will only make you unlovable. After delivering her advice, she leaned her head against John's shoulder with a sweet and demure expression, flaunting her happiness. Standing nearby, Mower's darkened gaze betrayed his jealousy at the sight. I smiled faintly, taking a step toward the high platform at the center of the banquet hall. If they wanted an apology, I'd give them one, but it would be unforgettable. Standing in the spotlight, I picked up the microphone I had prepared beforehand. Facing the curious crowd, I smiled and began to speak. First, thank you all for coming to celebrate my birthday.
It means a lot to me.
Now, let me share some important news. First, I said, my tone calm yet piercing, I hereby annul my engagement to Mr. Mower. The color drained from Mower's face as he stared at me in stunned disbelief. Second, I continued, I know many of you are curious about the identity of my brother John's one true love. Yes, it's none other than the gentle and lovely Miss Nguyen standing beside him. However, I paused, letting my words linger. The gates of the Nguyen family will never open for Miss Nguyen. The crowd erupted in murmurs as Mary's face turned ashen, her knees nearly buckling. Amusing that she'd gotten too full of herself, forgetting who truly held the reins in the Nguyen family, but no matter. I was here to remind her, Sue Nguyen, groomed by renowned tutors from a young age, studying abroad at 16, earning a business degree from an Ivy League school, and returning at 20 to take over the family business, bringing it to unprecedented heights. As for Mower, our so-called family alliance? He was the one marrying up, and John, with his foolish obsession over love, he'd single-handedly ensure the Nguyen family's downfall. Ignoring the gasps and whispers from the crowd, I stepped off the platform, standing tall before the trio. Tilting my chin up, I glanced at them with a faint smirk. Satisfied with this apology? Mary was dumbfounded. She clearly hadn't anticipated this turn of events. In her mind, I should have been throwing a tantrum, embarrassing myself, and ultimately being condemned by everyone present, thereby solidifying her place as the radiant heroine. Not this, I'd flipped the script entirely, leaving her reeling. Mower wasn't faring much better. His composed, aloof demeanor shattered as he stared at me, unable to comprehend that the woman who had once pursued him so earnestly was now walking away. Losing his cool, he snapped, "Why are you canceling our engagement? Don't be so petty. Mary and I are innocent. There's nothing improper about our relationship." I raised an eyebrow, silently mocking him with my gaze. Emboldened, he puffed up his chest as if offering me a great favor. "Fine. I'll marry you if that's what you want. Happy now?" I couldn't help but laugh. The audacity. "Mower, your arrogance is revolting," I said flatly, watching the blood drain from his face. Without giving him another glance, I turned to leave. But I didn't get far before Mary grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly tight. To be fair, Mary was beautiful, delicately charming and radiant. But right now, her face was twisted in fury, with a hint of fear lurking beneath. "Sue," she said through gritted teeth, "I've always respected you as John's elder sister. That's why I call you sister. But my love for John is none of your business. You have no right to meddle. Yes, I'm just the daughter of a housemaid, and I could never match up to the Nguyen family. But do you really have to humiliate me like this? Her tears spilled over, glimmering like jewels, painting a picture of defiant fragility. A pity, Miss Wynne. I corrected her coolly. What? Mary faltered, her expression momentarily blank. I pried her hand off my wrist, straightening my sleeves. Please address me as Miss Wynne. There is no familial bond between us, nor will there ever be. I cast a sidelong glance at John, my meaning unmistakable. Mary froze in place. You can't treat me like this. If it weren't for that year, her voice cracked, and she leaned against John, sobbing pitifully. John's face darkened as he wrapped an arm around her. Sue, don't think too highly of yourself. You don't run the Wynne family. Truth be told, having such a love-struck fool for a brother was my greatest failure. Couldn't even call me sister properly. No manners, but he'd soon find out whether I ran the Wynne family or not. As for Mary's half-finished sentence, my gaze turned cold. She wanted to bring up the fire from years ago. The one where she'd saved John's life, binding him to her with an unpayable debt of gratitude. She was right. I owed her my thanks, an everlasting one. At that, on the eve of my return to the country, the Wynne family mansion caught fire. Mary came to live with us when she was 8, along with her mother. When John was a child, he was kidnapped. Somehow, he managed to escape and, after a terrifying ordeal, ended up being taken in by this mother-daughter pair. Out of gratitude, my father gave them a sum of money. It was Mary's mother who requested to come to our home. She explained that Mary's father was a gambling addict and, after losing money and drinking, would often beat and scold them. She begged my father for a job and the chance to take Mary far away from that nightmare. Mary was the same age as John. My father, seeing how well-mannered and sensible she appeared, took pity on her and sent her to the prestigious school John was attending at the time. The two of them grew up together, almost like childhood sweethearts. At first, John always bullied her, barely acknowledging her when she spoke. They bickered their way to the age of 16, then, that night, the mansion went up in flames. My father perished in the fire, but Mary managed to save John, who was furthest away from her room. From that moment, Mary left a lasting mark in John's heart. In novels, this type of dramatic and bittersweet storyline always seems to captivate readers. John later discovered that the fire in the mansion was tied to Mary's mother. The hatred he felt clashed with his uncontrollable love for Mary, leaving him in constant conflict. He kept her at arm's length, yet couldn't let her go, even going so far as to use an engagement with another woman to mask his feelings for her. On the day of John's engagement, Mary faked her own death, and Mower hid her for 2 years. This was the climax of the story. During those 2 years, John lost his mind over her. He broke off the engagement, indulged in drinking and self-destruction, and even attempted suicide. The pain of losing her solidified his love for Mary. He forgot about his father's death, remembering only the image of Mary risking her life to save him. What a noble, touching romance. It only cost the lives of my father and me to highlight their love. We merely lost our lives. They almost lost their love. Now that my father is dead, I've decided to walk a path completely opposite to this novel's world of values. Mary, as always, stood stubbornly in place, tears falling like beads, her cheeks flushed red. She clung tightly to John's sleeve, sobbing to the point of hiccuping. Let's leave. We'll never come back. After all, your family doesn't welcome us. She glanced at me with defiance in her eyes. John gently wiped her tears, full of affection.
All right.
We'll leave and never come back. This was music to my ears. The further away they were, the better. It would save me the trouble of dealing with their bad luck. So, playing along with their little act, I pulled out my phone and called my secretary. Secretary Lynn, cancel all of John's cards. Reclaim his cars and properties. Yes, everything. John, Mary, I quite enjoyed the colorful array of emotions on their faces. After hanging up, I walked up to John, patted him on the shoulder, and said, My dear brother, you'd better hurry home. Yes, I mean that cozy little house where you've been keeping your hidden gem. If you're late, you'll have nothing left. John gritted his teeth. Sue, you've got some nerve. I shrugged indifferently. How fortunate I was to awaken in this world and find John to be the same spoiled, entitled, good-for-nothing second-generation heir who could only spend money and chase women. Let's see how he plans to support his beloved now without any money. I turned and walked away, hearing Mary yelling behind me about how she loved John, not his money, and how she'd still love him even if he had nothing. How touching. I applaud her for it. When I got home, my mother blocked my way. Dressed in an elegant cyan silk suit, she looked furious. She immediately questioned why I had canceled John's cards. How was he supposed to live without money? I looked at this woman who had been pampered her entire life, never knowing hardship, and I suddenly envied her a little, born with a silver spoon in her mouth. She grew up surrounded by luxury and married my father without a hitch. Then she lived as a wealthy wife without a care in the world. When the family faced disaster, she was on vacation in the Maldives with her socialite friends. My father died, and the company fell into chaos. All she did was cry about how my father was gone and John was too young. Offering no help whatsoever, I ignored her and went straight to the company. Once the company stabilized, she wiped away her tears and resumed her life of shopping, facials, cards, and afternoon tea with her friends, a well-kept bird in a golden cage.
First my father's, now mine.
She still hasn't realized who her true provider is. All right then, should I cut off your cards and give the money to him? My mother froze, clutching her chest, and tears welled up instantly. I knew it. Now that your father is gone, you see me as a burden. Now I understood why she liked Mary so much. Beyond the fact that Mary had saved John's life, the two of them were fundamentally the same type of person. Both were parasitic vines clinging to men, finding common ground in their conversations that I end this world. Men are always in the highest positions, especially men like John and Mower, whose families hold significant social resources. They are magnets for countless women, desperate to attach themselves. My mother, Mary, and even the unawakened version of myself were all reflections of this dynamic. Sister, the most important thing for us women is to find a good husband. Being too assertive or career-driven makes us unlovable. What a seductive declaration. What a normalized rule of the game. As long as you win a man's heart, you're a winner. Just like now, I heard my mom say, Sue, I know you've worked hard all these years, and the company is doing well under your management, but all of this will eventually belong to your brother. You're going to get married sooner or later, and you can't treat your brother this way. I laughed, a genuine laugh. Whether or not I get married someday is irrelevant, but one thing is certain. I am not building an empire just to hand it over to someone else for free, I said. Mom, what exactly gave you this ridiculous confidence in your airheaded son? Does he have the ability to maintain your habit of emptying entire stores every time you go shopping? Or is it that you think those rich ladies in your circle still include you in their outings because you gave birth to a son? You're wrong. It's because of me. It's because of me that you even have the nerve to stand here and speak to me so imperiously. And guess what? I'm a woman. She froze, her expression utterly blank. I knew the kind of impact my words would have on her. After all, in the original storyline, I had obediently followed her advice, going so far as to simmer soup in the kitchen when Mary was pregnant. But this is long overdue. I didn't look at her again and went straight upstairs. I knew she wouldn't let this go so easily, but that's fine. We have plenty of time to deal with it. Slowly, a few days later, Mower showed up, throwing a pile of contracts onto my desk. Sue, what is the meaning of this? I lazily lifted my eyes to meet his, saying nothing. Why did you cancel the partnership with the Song Corporation? I have to admit, his question was remarkably stupid. The contract expired, and I didn't want to renew it. Is there a problem? There wasn't. I'm not an idiot who would break a contract out of spite and throw money away on penalties just for fun. Mower was left speechless. He paced back and forth in my office before glaring at me angrily. I don't understand what your problem is. First, you want to cancel the engagement. Now, you're pulling out of the partnership between the two families. Or, is this your way of getting my attention? Is this your tactic, playing hard to get? Before I could respond, he continued, nodding as if he had it all figured out. Fine, you've succeeded. Let's get married right now. We'll grab our household registries and head to the civil affairs office. Can you stop causing trouble already? I rolled my eyes and shot back. Mower, why don't you tell me? What exactly is so great about you that I should cling to you and refuse to let go? I let out a derisive laugh, mocking his self-importance. Someone like him, raised in the lap of luxury, naturally assumed he was desirable in every way. A swarm of women clinging to him validated that belief. But if you asked him to name one exceptional quality about himself, he wouldn't be able to come up with a single thing. Wealth? I have that. Looks? Sorry, I have those too. Education, skills, and abilities? I'm not lacking in those either. Mower wasn't shameless enough to sell himself to me in person. I still remember when I stepped in to save the Wynn Corporation. The company was full of scheming men, all waiting to see me, a woman, make a fool of myself. They wanted to watch me fall, struggle, and finally admit that I was just a weak, powerless woman. Mower's face turned alternately pale and flushed as his lips quivered, unable to form a rebuttal. Frustrated, he finally snapped, "You'll regret this." Before storming out, I picked up the contracts on my desk, flipped through them, and made a call. My little brother has some pride. I'll give him that. To prove his independence, he handed over all his property deeds and car keys to Secretary Lynn. According to her, she had never seen so many keychains in her entire life. Impressive. Very bold, I heard that John, with whatever money he had left, rented a 3-bedroom apartment and moved in with Mary and her mother. Speaking of Mary's mom, John destroyed all evidence linking her to the fire that killed my father. He erased every trace, leaving me with nothing to pursue. John, full of ambition, was spurred on by Mary to write a few business proposals and try his hand at attracting venture capital. Too bad he doesn't understand himself as well as his drinking buddies do. John returned from his first attempt utterly defeated. Undeterred, he pitched his ideas to a few other investors. The result? The same, those proposals? Nothing more than a pile of worthless paper. Secretary Lynn showed me the copies, and I couldn't stop laughing the entire afternoon. I'm sorry. I shouldn't laugh at someone's dreams. That's on me. After I finished laughing, I earnestly instructed her not to bother showing me these again. It's a waste of paper. In order to solve his financial problems, John had no choice but to look for a job. Without much work experience, he struggled to find employment. Big companies wouldn't hire him, and he looked down on small ones. Plus, he had to start as an intern, earning a pitiful salary. Still, he refused to let Mary support him. After all, even after being with John, Mary continued to enjoy her lavish lifestyle, collecting luxury goods and money without restraint. I didn't take any of that back. After all, a man's dignity deserves some respect. Besides, I doubted Mary would ever use that money to help John. Determined to support Mary and her mother, John ultimately chose to work as a food delivery rider. The pay was credited daily, so he could get money immediately. Mary, however, created a social media account to become an influencer. She started posting videos detailing how much John earned each day and how he spent most of it on gifts for her. These posts became her proof of love. Look, this is a gift from my darling husband. I absolutely love it. My husband worked so hard today, even fell off his bike. So heartbroken, boo-hoo. P.S. He still remembered to get me the doll I wanted. Love you, darling.
Moi.
The comment section exploded with activity. People began praising her husband-taming skills, asking for advice. OMG. You and your husband are so in love. How can I find someone like him? Please share. This is what being spoiled looks like. It's not about money, it's about the love behind it. I'm crying. Straight men, take notes. Mary thrived on this attention, shaping her online persona as the perfect, pampered wife. Occasionally, she'd post videos of herself doing housework, waiting obediently for John to come home. She even started live streaming, sharing their love story. I love him so much, but because of differences in social status, his sister refuses to accept me. She even called me a poor girl born to poor parents, saying I deserve to stay poor forever, just because my mother used to work as a maid in their house. But honestly, does profession define a person's worth? Why should there be job discrimination? Shouldn't we judge people based on their character and morals? Her live stream clips went viral, and John's identity was quickly uncovered. Public outrage erupted, and I became the scapegoat, accused of being the reason they'd fallen into such dire straits. Accusations of job discrimination were plastered across every headline, tarnishing my name, and my private phone number, home address, and workplace were all leaked. The company's stock price took a significant hit. Seizing the opportunity, I bought up scattered shares, increasing my stake in the company. The controversy soon escalated into a debate about social class inequality. Floral wreaths started arriving at the company's reception daily, each bearing banners that read, "Die, you job discriminating, be asterisk TC." Along with those came dead rats dripping with blood and threatening letters written in chicken blood. At home, things were slightly better thanks to the privacy measures in the villa community, though the cleaning fees skyrocketed due to the daily mess at the gate. Other residents, fed up with the filth, lodged constant complaints. The property manager, frustrated, eventually called me. "Miss Wen, the online uproar surrounding you is out of control. While we're committed to protecting residents' privacy, our capabilities are limited. Could you look into resolving this matter?" After hanging up, my phone rang again almost immediately, followed by a flood of hateful texts. Alone in the silent nights, I read through them again and again. The insults were varied but shared a common venom. "Spinster. Aren't you born of a woman yourself? How dare you discriminate against others?
Just die already.
You're a woman too, yet you're this vile? Is it jealousy because someone else found a good man? Hey, big sis, can you hurry up and meet your end already? You're disgusting. What are you even proud of?" Mary also began texting me. "Sis, everyone's cursing you. Don't you think you've done something wrong? Sis, must be tough getting scolded at work. Seeing how hard you're working for John and me, I really feel sorry for you. Oh, don't be too upset. When you're old, I'll make sure to find you a good nursing home. After all, being unloved must be hard." I chuckled, turned off my phone, and ignored her. Recently, she had become a live streaming influencer, earning money through product promotions. Most of her earnings were spent on a shopping spree. Apparently, the recent hard times had really pent up her desires. My mother, sitting beside me with a face mask on, kept muttering that everything was my fault. If you'd just agreed to let them be together, none of this would have happened. Look how it's all blown up now. I can't even go out for tea or shopping anymore. She mentioned that the SA had been holding a few bags for her at the store, urging her to pick them up. She looked at me with eager eyes. "They're all limited editions, you know." Since our argument, my mother had been cautious with her spending, fearing I'd cut off her card. Seeing me stare at her in silence, she shrank back timidly. "Why are you looking at me like that?" I put down my phone, waved my hand with a hint of allure in my voice. "Mom, how about this? From now on, I'll allocate 5 million yuan every month from the company's charitable fund for you to use." Her eyes widened and she stammered, You mean it?" I nodded seriously. She didn't understand the intricacies of company operations, especially that charitable funds are strictly regulated and can't be misused. But that didn't matter. It was enough to pacify her. "Yes, but I have only one condition. You must spend the money in the places I designate. What do you think?" Tempted. She nodded eagerly, like a little chick pecking at rice.
Good.
Obedient as always, I stood up and headed upstairs to change my clothes. "I've got an appointment, so I won't be joining you for lunch." At the cafe while waiting for someone, my phone kept buzzing incessantly. Even that idiot mower called to mock me. "Sue, how does it feel to finally get your comeuppance? Your situation at the company must be awful right now. If you beg me, I might reluctantly consider resuming our collaboration. See, women can't survive without men after all. Admit it, you're not even worth a strand of Mary's hair. She's so much better than you, obedient and sweet." TCH, what a delusional, love-struck fool. I promptly hung up and blocked his number. My meeting was with John's ex-fiancée, Fanny. She arrived on time, which I appreciated. I liked people with a sense of punctuality. It made working together much smoother. Fanny strutted over and sat across from me, her demeanor haughty. You're quite bold, Miss One. Even with all the public outrage against you, you still dare to show your face in public. Looks like your company's PR department isn't doing a great job. Her tone was mocking, clearly relishing my predicament. I leisurely took a sip of my coffee before responding. Not as bad as being used by your father as a pawn for a marriage alliance, right? Her face darkened instantly. After John broke off their engagement, Fanny's father arranged another marriage for her, solely for family interests, completely disregarding her feelings. Word had it that he'd said, I've given you the best of everything growing up. Now it's time for you to repay me. Marriage alliances were the most reliable way to exchange business interests. As a child of such a family, enjoying its privileges came with a price. Especially for women, who were rarely considered as heirs to the business. They were often destined to serve as bargaining chips in marriage. I asked, doesn't this make you bitter? Her expression faltered, a trace of melancholy flashing across her face. She smirked self-deprecatingly. What's the point of being bitter? Do I have a choice? I'm not like you. Your family's upheaval gave you a chance to rise to the top. You can cancel an engagement if you feel like it. Do I have that power? What if I gave you that opportunity? I challenged. She hesitated, visibly taken aback. You? You can barely fend for yourself right now. What could you possibly offer me? Besides, don't even think about asking me to seduce John and ruin that ridiculous couple's relationship. I won't do it. I have moral boundaries. I chuckled wryly and placed an agreement draft on the table. Work with me, collaborate with the Wynn Corporation. Prove your worth to your father, and let the Wynn Corporation be your leverage to call off your engagement. I know you think I'm bluffing, but do you dare to take this gamble? To bet on your courage as a woman? Her gaze lingered on the draft, and her expression betrayed her inner turmoil. I continued, as for the negative public opinion against me, do you really think it's because my company's PR team hasn't done its job? I glanced at the time and prompted her to check the latest news. The internet was flooded with videos about me, featuring testimonies from women of various professions. I met Miss One at a mall. At the time, I was being physically abused by my ex-husband, who was punching and kicking me. This incident even became a social hot topic back then. Look it up if you don't believe me. Like many women, I used to dream of a loving marriage, of being a wife who could rely on her husband, bear children, and care for the home. But what did I get in return for my devotion? Scars and trauma. Miss One gave me a new life. She encouraged me to work and assured me that when corporations' offices and factories are equipped with daycare centers and staff accommodations, so I wouldn't have to worry about anything. Would someone who supposedly sees only class and ignores suffering have noticed me, let alone helped me? Love is beautiful, but shouldn't we also strive to be ourselves within love? My mother is currently the housekeeper for the Wynn family, and as you can see, I am a disabled person without a left arm. But now, I am a teacher, living independently in society through my own efforts. I once gave up on myself, but Miss One is a kind person. She never looked down on me and even helped me find teachers and materials, giving me the courage to stand on the podium. I am Wen's secretary, surnamed Lynn. You see me now, well-dressed and in a good job, so you must think I come from a well-off background, right? But I am from a remote mountainous area where girls usually drop out of school at 16 or 17 to either work or marry. I was one of the students she sponsored. I wanted to study, to escape the mountains that trapped me, and it was she who gave me this opportunity. Fanny watched these videos in silence, repeatedly glancing up at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. I had avoided falling into Mary's trap of self-justification. None of the women in these videos spoke about Mary, but their lives and accomplishments were the perfect counterarguments to her shallow, pampered princess ideology. These women had all worked hard to thrive in society, pursuing their paths courageously. Their professions and struggles were a testament against career discrimination, and everything in these videos could withstand scrutiny. As for Mary's public slander, I had done nothing to counter it directly. I was letting the storm seep into every corner of society, turning it into a free publicity campaign to establish a positive and inspiring image of women for myself. I pushed the contract towards Fanny. Look, if these women can change their destinies, why can't you? Are you really willing to marry a man you don't love and be shackled by a marriage for the rest of your life? Given the current public opinion trends, this partnership would be a win-win, wouldn't it? Fanny agreed to the collaboration. Before leaving, she asked why I chose her as a partner, and I smiled and replied, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman." This quote from Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex seemed to resonate with her. At the same time, I handed her some photos of jewelry and asked for her assistance in locating them as part of our exchange. Given the Fay family's extensive connections in the jewelry business, it was a task I could not accomplish on my own. These pieces had been part of my collection, but they were lost in the ruins of that fire years ago. Meanwhile, the public opinion had shifted dramatically. Discussions about female independence were on the rise, and Mary's previous comments had turned her into a cautionary tale. Online, Mary was mercilessly ridiculed. "No wonder he doesn't care about you. You're just a lazy, entitled parasite. Seriously? You're out here flaunting expensive gifts bought with a man's hard-earned money? That's pathetic. If you had even tried building a future with him, I'd respect you. But you're just rubbish." Photos of Mary shopping in high-end luxury stores were juxtaposed with videos of John delivering food under the scorching sun and eating a simple bowl of noodles from a street stall. The contrast fueled even harsher criticism. Mary, overwhelmed, began calling me daily, begging for mercy. I simply laughed. "Huh. I am a woman, but not a saint." Some netizens even started apologizing to me online, saying they'd been too harsh and asking for forgiveness, but I ignored them. I was busy launching a new product line with Fanny, leveraging the massive wave of traffic brought by the online discourse to empower more women. The creation of this new line meant new job opportunities, encouraging women to step out of their comfort zones and redefine societal expectations. I wanted them to know that household chores and raising children are not solely a woman's responsibility. I wanted them to understand that finding and winning over a good man is not the only path in life. Naturally, my actions drew some scorn, with accusations that I was indulging in some victim complex. Such comments, unsurprisingly, mostly came from men. I didn't care, did I end this fictional world? I was walking a path against the narrative. I had disrupted its intended course, throwing the original plot into disarray. The protagonist, Halo, shattered beyond recognition. Yet, something inevitable still happened. Mary got pregnant. I remembered my eventual fate in this novel. I would be ruined by her 3-year-old genius son, who would hack into my company's system, crash my stock prices, and leave me penniless. Mary sent me a text to brag. After the online backlash, it was clear her mental state had taken a turn for the worse. "Sister, I'm pregnant, and it's John's baby. Now, shouldn't you return all the wealth you've been hoarding from him to us? You'd better leave the house without taking a penny, or else I might get upset, and who knows, I might not be able to deliver this baby." When John brought Mary back home, I was having tea with Fanny. She'd been doing quite well recently. Initially, her father strongly opposed her decision to collaborate with me, claiming that two women couldn't possibly achieve anything worthwhile. But when she slapped a satisfying financial report onto his wide redwood desk, he finally shut his mouth. Even her decision to call off her engagement went more smoothly after that. After all, wasn't a capable daughter better than a son-in-law who might not even share the same interests as him? I hung up after receiving a call from the housekeeper, feeling a bit annoyed, and tossed my phone onto the table. "What's the matter? Who's got you so riled up?" Fanny chuckled, taking a sip of her tea. "Mary's pregnant." Puffed. I calmly wiped the tea off my face as Fanny hurriedly grabbed tissues to help clean me up. "Sorry. I'm so sorry." I glared at her before standing up, preparing to head home. Fanny called after me. "Oh, by the way, I found news about those jewels you asked me to investigate. I should have them in a couple of days. I'll bring them to you then." I waved my hand in acknowledgement as I left. When I arrived at the house, laughter spilled out from inside. I heard Mary's sweet voice. "This baby's already causing so much trouble for me. I've been feeling nauseous lately and can only think of drinking sister's borscht. I sneered and pushed open the door. I'd be happy to cook for you, as long as you don't die before drinking it. The laughter inside abruptly stopped. My mother was the first to react. Sue, you're home? I ignored her and strode over to Mary, staring at her belly without saying a word. Mary seemed intimidated by the look on my face and shrank back on the sofa, clutching her stomach. Sister, why are you looking at me like that? You're scaring me. I scoffed. What? Do you also need me to wash your feet and massage your legs? Oh, great pregnant lady? I coldly added. Have I not made myself clear before? No one from your family is allowed to step into this house. I turned my glare toward Mary's mother.
Perfect.
I didn't go looking for them, but they had the audacity to come straight to my door. I'm the one who brought them here. If you have a problem, take it up with me. John shouted angrily, in response. I slapped him hard across the face. And then again. The room fell into silence. Mary suddenly let out a shrill scream. Sister, what are you doing? How can you just hit people like that? John, does it hurt? Get out. Don't think for a second that just because you're pregnant, I won't dare do anything to you. I shot back at Mary mercilessly. She cowered, too afraid to retort. Turning to a furious John, my eyes brimmed with tears for the first time. Do you really think I don't know how Dad died? How dare you? How dare you bring them back into this house, huh? John's face went pale, his lips trembling as he struggled to respond. You are truly unfilial. My mother, standing to the side, looked confused. When she heard me mention my father, she finally reacted. What are you all talking about? She muttered. Mary's mother panicked, rushing forward. In-law, don't listen to Sue's nonsense. She was abroad at the time. What could she possibly know? She's just making baseless accusations. And let's not forget, it was Mary who saved John's life. She then turned to me, her eyes filled with smugness. Miss Wynne, I'm old enough to be your elder, so how about a little respect? Spouting such slander without evidence. Do you even have proof? Her brazen, shameless attitude made me want to tear her apart. Proof? The evidence had long been destroyed by my oh-so-dear brother himself. Seeing me unable to reply, Mary's mother smirked and pulled her daughter back to sit on the sofa. Some people, can't get married themselves, so they blame other families' daughters for being more beautiful. And they cling to their own brother's wealth. Where in the world is that acceptable? Mary clutched her stomach, nodding in agreement with a smug expression. Before I could react, my mother suddenly exploded with anger. I watched in stunned silence as she let out a scream, lunging at Mary's mother and yanking her hair furiously. How dare you insult my daughter? My daughter is beautiful and earns her own money. Who do you think you are, huh? I'll scratch you to death. To be honest, I was shocked. I felt like I had never truly known my mother before this moment. The scene descended into utter chaos, a complete mess. John's first reaction was to rush forward and pull Mary away, worried she might get hurt. Truly living up to the novel's central theme of sweet romance, my expression darkened, and I was just about to shout for everyone to stop. Enough. Stop fighting. Me? Someone, please tell me why my lines keep getting stolen. I turned around to see Fanny standing breathlessly at the door, holding an envelope. Evidence. Here's your evidence. I strode forward and grabbed the envelope, clutching it tightly as if afraid it might be taken away. Fanny met my gaze and finally nodded. Inside were pawnshop records for my missing jewelry. The person who pawned them had used their real ID, Mary's mother. The money from the pawn had been transferred into Mary's father's account. At last, I understood why the fire had to happen. You were the one who cleaned my room back then. When you realized I was about to return to the country, and the theft couldn't be hidden anymore, you decided to cover it all up with a fire. Mary and her mother's faces turned deathly pale. The traces of the fire were destroyed by John. Even though I knew who the culprit was, I couldn't accuse her of arson. I had to start with the smallest clues. Over the years, I combed through countless photos of the scene. Finally, I found something. I reported it to the police, accusing Mary's mother of theft. When the police tracked down Mary's father, he had just finished gambling and drinking. It said that the two of them were like dogs biting each other in the interrogation room, exposing a mountain of dirty secrets. Even John's kidnapping back in the day turned out to be Mary's father's doing. He had racked up a massive gambling debt and desperately needed money, so he decided to resort to kidnapping. At that prestigious private school, every student came from a wealthy family. John was the unlucky one who got targeted, but he managed to escape on his own. Coincidentally, he ran into Mary and her mother. What followed unfolded like a drama. John and Mary fell in love. In the end, those two got what they deserved. No chance of ever getting out of jail. John and Mary were kicked out once again, penniless. Mary clutched her stomach, shouting at me, "I'm pregnant, and it's your family's child. How dare you treat me like this?" I slammed the photos that an internet user had sent me into her face. They were clear as day, her secret meetings with Mower, intense kissing, half-removed clothes. At the time, my lovesick brother was busy delivering food on the streets. "This baby might not even be John's," I said coldly. I didn't bother arguing with her or paying attention to the color draining from John's face. I turned and went back inside. I heard later that the two of them argued constantly after returning home. Mary would start by calling John a useless good-for-nothing who couldn't even earn money to support her. They tormented each other for months until the child was born. John immediately went for a DNA test. It turned out the baby wasn't his. Mower arrived in a luxury car to pick up Mary, and she climbed in with the baby without a second glance at John. Ironically, even Mower's family didn't accept Mary, calling her fickle and immoral, unworthy of the Song family. They told Mower that if he insisted on marrying her, they'd cut ties. Mower, stubborn as he was, took the family assets allocated to him and decisively severed all ties. Mary, thrilled with her new arrangement, flaunted the luxury items Mower bought her on social media at an astonishing rate. Fanny and I speculated how long it would take for him to blow through his wealth. As it turned out, not long at all. When Mower sold his house, he came to me in desperation. "Sue, I was blind. It's you I truly love. I know you still love me. Let's get married, okay?"
Ha.
"Get lost," I replied. Fanny later told me my expression at the time looked like I'd swallowed a dead fly. Meanwhile, Fanny and I intensified collaboration between our companies on other ventures. Her father finally recognized her business acumen and stopped pressuring her to marry, instead entrusting her with more of the family projects. After Mary squeezed every last penny out of Mower, she abandoned him and the child. Word has it she moved on to a series of other men, bald, pot-bellied bosses or married, middle-aged men. Her standards were low, as long as they spent money on her. When I was named Outstanding Young Entrepreneur, a group of industry bigshots decided to host a dinner to celebrate, network, and discuss new opportunities. Unexpectedly, many people showed up, and Mary attended as the date of an oily-faced, overweight boss. When she saw me, a flash of jealousy crossed her face. Before she could act, the man next to her smacked her hard. "That's Ms. Wen, someone countless people would kill to meet. Ms. Wen, I toast to you." The boss approached me obsequiously, holding up his glass. I politely covered my glass with my hand. "Apologies, I'm not drinking for health reasons." Dejected, he muttered complaints about Mary being unpresentable as he walked away. That night, as I waited outside the hotel for my driver, Mary stormed up to me. Gritting her teeth, she hissed, "What are you so proud of? Sitting with a group of men drinking. You're just a cheap whore." I didn't hold back this time. I raised my hand and slapped her across the face. Then I said loudly, "Mr. Wong, you've got a real firecracker of a date this time. Quite the sharp tongue." As I got into my car, I glanced back to see Mary being dragged by the hair and slapped repeatedly. Her downfall didn't end there. She contracted a disease from her numerous relationships, and no man wanted her anymore. As for John, after realizing he'd been duped by Mary, he knelt outside my door every day, begging for forgiveness. At first, I ignored him. Later, I told him to kneel at my father's grave instead if he wanted to repent. Once he'd done that long enough, I sent him to work at the lowest level of one of my branch companies. "You'll stay there," I said, "and climb up one step at a time. John accepted his fate, pleading only that I didn't abandon him completely. As for my mother, she still pestered me about the 5 million yuan dream I promised her. I smiled and delivered on it, but sent her to a rural area for poverty alleviation work. This money better be spent right. Otherwise, don't bother coming back, I told her soon after. I began receiving calls from her assigned assistant. Ms. Wen, your mother cried all day and wants to return home. Let her cry. Once she's done, she can get back to work. Ms. Wen, your mother is on a hunger strike, demanding you come to bring her back. Tell her I'm busy. Ms. Wen, your mother said the children in the mountains are quite adorable. Raising an eyebrow, I replied, remind her to eat on time. Later, I began angel investing in my name. Watching young women pitch their business ideas with confidence and passion, I felt a sense of accomplishment. I had changed the course of this story entirely, steering it toward my own goals and achieving them.